chief executives of Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna have shared more than $100 million in pay during the pandemic, reflecting the huge commercial success of the mRNA COVID vaccines developed by their pharmaceutical companies. Albert Bourla of Pfizer, Ugur Sahin of BioNTech, and Stefan Bancel of Moderna have also seen their paper wealth grow over the past 2 years because of share price increases driven by investor enthusiasm for companies developing COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. For more on these headlines, we're going to cross over to London. We're joined by international financial analyst Opeoluwa Dapo Thomas. Good morning to you, Ope. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to start with the U.S. Possibly looking at halting Russia's dollar debt payments through U.S. banks. What would be the impact of that if that was to happen?
Well, it's going to be huge. It's a big thing that's going to happen to the international financial system. Like you rightly said, it's going to lead to the default payment, and that's going to put an asterisk on the credibility of the Russian financial system or even the Russian economy as its own. So you're going to have questions about can Russia pay debts in the future? But the idea of what the US is doing is basically what I call the financial nuclear weapon. So, I mean, they don't want to combat physically. They don't want to use nuclear weapons. So might as well use another route, which is legitimate. The gloves are off. So what they're looking for is to try and hurt the reserves of Russia. So they know that, yes, they've got custody of some Russian funds, but obviously Russia has money outside somewhere else. So they want them to drain that reserve. That's the target, to drain that reserve. And then also puts any other potential, reserve coming in. So that's the idea. They're trying to reduce the financial weaponry or the financial war chest of Putin so that he cannot fund this war. So the gloves are off, like I said, and the US is trying to tighten sanctions, and this will cause recession certainly for Russia. We're looking at 15 years of growth taken away from Russia, skyrocketing prices, and then the people are going to get alienated. They're trying to turn Russia to a pariah state, and they're on the way of doing that.
Tough stuff coming there. The World Bank downgrading East Asia and the Pacific. I mean, is this a combination of war, rising inflation, COVID, and etc.? How do you see, how the World Bank came to this downgrade?
Well, the world is interrelated. Everyone is in the globalization has brought all countries together. So what can be happening in Europe can affect a country in Asia. So like you rightly said, there's a combination of that. People think COVID has gone away, but COVID hasn't. COVID is still there. If you checked in England yesterday and throughout this week, a lot of flights have been cancelled. 200 flights, 300 flights have been cancelled because a lot of airline staff are having COVID issues and stuff like that. In China as well, there's lockdown in a few places because of COVID. Also the war, like I said, is also an impact. This is not war, with no disrespect to Azerbaijan and Armenia. This is not war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. It's war between Russia and Ukraine. And Russia is top number one natural gas exporter in the world, top 3 oil producer in the world, and top 15 global economies in the world. So this is a big country, and like I said, the world is interrelated. So things that are happening there are basically sparked up or being a catalyst for high commodity prices. And we all know high commodity prices always leads to a recession or always leads to overheating of the economy. So that is why the World Bank has looked at and they've analyzed it. So we have pandemic and a war. That's why basically they've made this forecast.
Thanks for that. Speaking of war, what do you make of Australia gearing up to spend about $2.6 billion to upgrade its missile capabilities?
Well, there are a lot of tensions everywhere now in the world. Everyone now is looking at their neighbors. The Russia-Ukraine thing has sparked people's defensive. You see how much NATO has already invested. Germany says they're going to increase their investments in their weaponry. And Australia too now as well, they are going to have to defend themselves. If you're current with the international relations between Australia and China, you know there are some tensions since last year. So Australia are trying to defend themselves and get ready for any sort of war in alliance with the United States against China. So it's basically preparing themselves for that. Anything can happen. Like I said, I'm not here going to say that there's going to be a World War III, but it would be very, very futile or not or negligent to not get ready to defend your borders just in case any spark happens. Like I said, China have been aggravated. We're looking at Taiwan. We're monitoring all these events. So these things have created a spark, and all nations are ready to defend themselves and their borders.
To JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon saying the war in Ukraine plus rising inflation are headwinds for the U.S. economy despite healthy macroeconomic indicators. Well, what do you make of what he said in his shareholder letter?
Yeah, there are a lot of talks about a Great Depression coming in, and that's because, like I said, the key factors, the key components for are already inflation, commodity prices, war, pandemic, all that. So yes, he's basically telling the shareholders that they should prepare, they should brace up. That things might look good now because obviously you've said it, people are spending and companies are spending. However, it might be what do you call it, a product of an overheating economy, or maybe just a recovery. But the alarm bells are on, and everyone is trying to gear up. And he's in a better position. You know, I mean, JP Morgan is the largest bank in America, so he's in a better position to understand, and he sees the impacts on it in the financial system and the economy, given the relation between both, what would I call it, metrics. So he's seen it, and he's basically trying to warn his shareholders that let's prepare for the worst. Do you get? There are a lot of good factors that we're seeing, but there's a possibility that we enter a recession, and yeah, he's basically telling his shareholders to prepare for it.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left. I want to ask you about pay packages. I think starting with these heads of Moderna, Pfizer, BioNTech, the $100 million that they've shared over the past year. Is that a reward for innovation, for vaccine production?
Yes, it's a reward for innovation. So, like I said on the last show, we're in a global competitive pool where everyone is trying to keep hold of their best talent. Roblox has been a wonderful company, and I think it was during the pandemic people noticed them and everything, so their share prices has gone up and stuff like that. So it's basically a way of rewarding the CEO and saying, okay, you've done a good job, and we want to keep you, because the truth is that another company can take him tomorrow, and Apple can wake up one morning and shoot him an offer that is currently higher than his current pay. So you have to keep hold of your talent. Companies right now need stability, and stability begins from employee not turning over and employee retention. Yes, and put it that way. So that's the key thing they're looking at. So he deserves, like I said, Roblox has been a big company, and their metrics are doing well. Cash flow is increasing, innovation, and they're looking into new sets of things that will spark a new internet age and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's a reward for good, what would I call it, job, for a good job he's done.
Great stuff. Opeoluwa Dapo Thomas, international financial analyst. Thank you so much for joining us from London to go through the headlines. Appreciate your insights.